Good evening, everyone. My name is Mir Zahir Abbas. I'm the Operations Manager for SciSec. Welcome to today's webinar. This webinar is a part of SciSec weekly series titled Samgacchadhwam, May We All Prosper Together. The objective is to cover various cybersecurity topics and provide conceptual overview. Let's start with some ground rules. All attendees of the webinar will be mute by default. We will have a Q&A at the end of the presentation in case of any questions. Share on the chat window and speaker will respond after the webinar. We will be recording this webinar and the recording will be uploaded on SciSec YouTube channel so you can revisit anytime later. This is the 33rd webinar. The topic today is Zero Trust Decoded, which is a hands-on session and continuation of the previous webinar. This is the webinar we have scheduled for coming weeks. We will soon be sharing all the details. We are hopeful that this webinar will kindle your interest in the field of cybersecurity. If you wish to access the videos of previous webinar, they are available on SciSec YouTube channel. As usual, we have an assessment after this webinar, which will be kept open for 60 minutes. The questions will be from the topics already covered in the webinar. Those who get 9 or more out of 12 will be given certificate of achievement. Those who are unable to take the assessment will be given a certificate of participation. At the end of the assessment, you will also be asked to provide feedback. Please give your genuine feedback and rest assured it will have no bearing on your assessment. Please provide your details clearly while taking this assessment, as the same will be used to generate certificates. The link of the assessment will be shared in the Q&A chat window. Please note this assessment is open only to those who have participated in the webinar. Let me now take the opportunity to introduce the speakers for the day. We have Mr. Seshadri, who is the Senior Director of Governance, Risk and Compliance Programs, Office of the CISO at Unisys. Seshadri, with nearly 3 decades of experience in diverse industries like manufacturing, engineering services, and IT services. Seshadri currently serves as a Senior Director of Governance, Risk and Compliance Programs under the Office of the CISO at Unisys. In his current role at Unisys, he leads a global team of cybersecurity professionals to help protect, enable, and grow the firm through various security, governance, risk, compliance, and audit programs run at a global scale. He is the part of leadership team in the Office of CISO. He is a certified Six Sigma Black Belt, certified Scrum Master, and is ITIL version 3 Foundation certified. He has delivered numerous trainings on Lean, Six Sigma, Green Belt, and Black Belt to both India and global audience. He is certified on various cybersecurity standards like ISO 27001, NIST 853, PCI DSS, and NIST CSS. He is an active member of the HBR Advisory Council and has recently been selected for a position effective Jan 1st, 2020 as a chair for IAPP Knowledge Net Bangalore chapter. The next speaker, N.S. Srivastava. N.S. Srivastava is an engineering director for Stealth at Unisys India Technology Center. He is responsible for providing engineering leadership to development of products related to network security, cloud, and biometrics. He has more than 20 years of development experience in operating system, high performance computing, open source, system management, servers, storage, and security with several leading product companies. He also leads the Unisys India level initiative called Grey Cells and is a member of Technology Board in the Asia Pacific Engineering Practice. Prior to joining Unisys, Srivatsa led engineering teams responsible for Dell system management as well as enterprise Linux on Dell servers. We have a last speaker, Mr. Ajit Matthews. Ajit Matthew holds a postgraduate degree in Information Communication and Network Engineering from Manipal Institute of Technology. He is a senior engineering at Unisys and comes with a decade of experience in the cloud and security platform. He is working on the Unisys Stealth program for 5 years, contributing towards the architecture and implementation of Zero Trust network architecture. He is passionate about agile frameworks and is a CSM certified Scrum Master. Over to you, Mr. Srivatsa.
Thank you, Zahir, for the introduction, and it's a pleasure to be amongst you all for the second part of this talk. I hope most of you are present for the first part that we went through last week. This is a logical continuation of that. We know some of you might have joined for the first time, so we will give you a quick recap as well, but I'm afraid it won't be at the depth you saw in part one. Ajit, if you can share the slides, I'll probably talk through that. So while Ajit brings up the slides, we have an interesting session lined up as a part of part two of this series. We called it hands-on because we wanted to show you Zero Trust in action. And we'll actually use one of our products to show how Zero Trust works and how it need not be that difficult. So let's see what we've lined up for today. We'll go to the next slide. So we already have an introduction. So this is the agenda. Last week, we spoke about various things associated with Zero Trust. We understood why we need Zero Trust, what about Zero Trust, what does it look like, so how does it matter, and why many people think it's not very easy. In this session, we'll have a short quiz just to teasingly look at what we remember from the previous session. And then we get into Zero Trust. We do a quick recap of Zero Trust so that if you've joined for the first time, you're not completely lost. You'll still be able to follow and stay with us. And then we'll show you Zero Trust in action using examples and demos, which will probably help you understand why Zero Trust is not really difficult if you're using the right technologies and tools, and a bit about what the future will hold. Again, we'll end with a quiz before the assessment, just to recap and make some of the concepts stick. So that will become your takeaway. We go to the next slide. Let's do a quick recap to test what we went through last week. So we have a series of quiz questions and we don't have a poll here. So what you can do is you can type in your answers in the chat window. We can look at that. So this is question one. You can type in your choice, A, B, C, or D, and we'll quickly see what the answer is. You can go ahead and type it in the chat window right away. Okay, we almost have a lot of B's and quite a few A's. It's almost seeming like a tie between A and B. Let's see what the answer is. Yeah, the correct answer is authorization. Authentication is really to check or to prove who you are. Authorization is to see whether you're allowed to do what you're supposed to do or what you're trying to do. Let's see what the next question is. We spoke about attack surfaces last time. Nice to see that a lot of you got it right. We'll go to the next question. We are quite clear from what we spoke last time. That's nice. This was an easy one. Thanks for getting this right. We have 2 more questions to go before we get started. How about question 4? Okay, that was a tricky one. And zero trust, we don't trust anything. We don't trust the network. We don't trust the users. We don't trust the device. That's the right answer. This is the last question. The question is which of these is not a zero trust principle. So let's see what the answer is. Yes. Yep. So we don't look at protecting only the internal network. That's the only answer that stood out. So let's move on to the slides of today's session. So we went through some quick education last time, and today we'll not cover all the jargon that we busted last time. We'll go to the next slide. So last time we spoke about all these jargon. To make it easier, we had divided them into categories, and generally we wanted you to remember them as a set of things around attack, set of things around defend. How do you protect? How do you detect? And how do you respond? So I grayed out some of the concepts. You can always get them from the last week's video. Just for us to recap, when you want to divide a segment logically into multiple chunks, whether it is based on how you combine network elements, users, or devices, all of them together, that's what we call a segment. I'm trying to make it more laymanish, avoiding some of the technical jargon. A demilitarized zone is a zone that you create just outside your network, or how you expose your services to untrusted parts of the network. SIEM is a system of software that you use for taking care of security incidents that happen across the network, incidents, alerts, and all of that. How do you manage that? When you notice that something is dangerous or a threat, how do you isolate that within the network, or how do you isolate parts of your network or a device, and how do you restrict what it can do by putting it in a quarantine? Then how do you analyze what happened when you want to investigate a security incident? Can call it security forensics. How do you authenticate someone, whether they are who they claim to be? That's the authentication part. And then how do you make sure they're allowed to do what they want to do? That's the authorization part. IAM is Identity and Access Management System that takes care of handling your entire identity and how to use multi-factor for that and how to identify somebody based on the entire context, all the things that go around authentication and authorization. That's how to club under IAM. There are multiple IAM systems. And let's go to the next slide. So we start with why zero trust. We started with why zero trust last week. We had multiple slides to explain this. I'm going to summarize them into one slide. Ajit, let's shift to the next slide. So what led us to zero security? We discussed how the IT ecosystem has changed rapidly over the last few years. The way your network looks has changed. The way you design your network has changed. There are a lot of software-defined elements that has come in. The way you manage your assets or what assets you manage and how expansive is the definition that has changed. Your attack surface has changed, which means the number of ways people can get into your network. That has changed. That has increased your ability to, or rather, it has increased your susceptibility to attacks. The attack vectors have changed. Attack vectors are nothing but ways in which somebody can get into a network as well as traverse through a network. The attackers themselves have changed. The attackers is a large attackers is a large term. It can even mean individuals or organizations or even national entities or countries. Time to respond has become very critical. The type of users that you have, the way they use your software, all of that has changed. We discussed how there are many software available as a service and how the users work from all over the geography now. They don't essentially work inside your network always. And then we looked at how application architectures have changed with the advent of cloud and movement towards microservices as well as software as a service. COVID-19 was the biggest disruptor that you saw this year. That's even changed how we work, and even the regulations around it have been changing now. So all of these happening at the same time, whether we had COVID-19 or not, the perimeter has largely dissolved. Earlier, you had the concept of a perimeter where you could look at encircling your organization um, and then protecting an organization within the boundaries of what you define. That those boundaries have dissolved now with the advent of Internet of Things, the number of things that connect to your network with cloud, where how much of your network is in your org or on the cloud or as a mix, with users being able to bring their own devices and users being able to work from anywhere. I just call it work from home here. It actually means work from anywhere. The concept of how you use VPNs and how much load the VPN takes now, and everything being software defined, including your perimeter. And then again, COVID-19, we repeated it here as well. So which means you really don't have a perimeter to protect. Then even the attacks have changed. The attackers have changed. In the sense, earlier people used to attack physical entities. Now we started attacking identities. The threats are not just from inside. Our threats are not just from outside. Threats are even from inside. You can't trust anyone, whether it's a person or a device, because even if you look at human beings or users, they're the weakest links in your chain of security, whether it's because of their innocence or ignorance or intent. So there are a lot of things that have changed, which means it has forced us to change the way we need to look at security. Go to the next slide. With so many changes happening, you cannot really look at security the way we used to look at it all these years. Can't look at the fault and moat approach as everyone popularly calls it. Means you can't define a perimeter and try to protect everything inside that. Now we have to change how we look at security. A few principles, which means instead of having a large circle that you want to present, can you protect smaller? Can you protect stronger? Means can be segmented into smaller chunks which we can protect better. then also protecting your entire network and assets from outsiders, can we focus on insiders as well? You need to protect what is critical to you very strongly. So we just included the saying which says it's not the strongest of the species that survives, not the most intelligent, but it's the one that adapts change. This might be true, uh, which actually means with so many things changing around the network and security, to be able to survive all these changes, even we need to adapt to these changes. And by the way, this was not a saying that came from Charles Darwin. I'm sorry about the background noise. Can't control that. So this was not from Charles Darwin. Apparently, somebody paraphrased what Charles Darwin said, and that paraphrasation continued and evolved. So we just included it as a source of interest. We'll go to the next slide. What is zero trust? That's the interesting part. I hope most of you will use this as a quick recap. There are a set of assumptions on which zero trust is based. One is that the network is always assumed to be hostile. You can't imagine that you have a network that is safe and then anything outside is hostile. Even the inside of a network is hostile, and the threats are both external and internal. The locality is not sufficient for deciding trust. Just because somebody entered your network does not mean they should be trusted. And then every device, every user, every flow on your network has to be authenticated and authorized because the threats can happen anywhere. And even the policies that you use for defining what is allowed, what is not allowed, those should continuously evolve dynamically, and it should get better and better from security perspective. And the more richer your policies are in terms of what is safe, what is not safe, and maybe how much of intelligence you use there, that would keep making your security better. So there are a set of assumptions that we start with. Then we look at a set of elements that go into zero trust. We just don't look at network alone or devices alone in terms of security. We look at data, what is critical, what is supercritical, what is normal in terms of users, various types of users and their behavior. We look at various kinds of devices, again, group them based on criticality or their function. You look at various network traffic. There's huge amount of intelligence that comes from the network traffic in terms of what is normal, what is not, what should you watch for, and then you look at various applications, both in terms of security as well as usage. So we looked at assumptions, we looked at elements, then we look at a set of principles that uh, kind of help you define zero trust. So when we look at principles, one is we need to make sure that where someone is connecting from does not determine whether they should be trusted or not, or what they can access, which means the location does not matter. Location does not determine what level of security should exist. And then the services should be granted access based on context. Means the infrastructure knows something about you, who you are, and what you're trying to do. So the context matters. And then for everything, there is need to know enforced, which means you can't access everything, can only access data that you absolutely need to know. So it's built on that principle. And our access to services should be authenticated, authorized, not just both of that. It should be encrypted for every request, which means you can prevent man in the middle attack even within the network. And you need to verify and never trust. Later, when we look at microsegmentation, we'll see why encryption becomes a necessary element or a critical element in zero trust. And then every traffic that's there in the network, how do you log it, inspect it, analyze it? How do you recognize risks and threats from that? The most critical thing, how quickly can you act on it? So we saw a set of assumptions, elements, and principles. How do we convert all these into an architecture that actually works for us? So the easiest way to do it is you have a lot of things that were already there as part of your architecture. To implement zero trust, most of the organizations as well as models introduce something called as a control plane. Control plane is not an element, but it really is a concept. It could be implemented as a set of entities as well. The control plane takes care of authenticating as well as authorizing whether it's user or a device in a distributed way, which means you're assuming that people can work from anywhere in a granular way and based on context, which means what has been the behavior as well as what the user or device is trying to access and why. And then control plane takes care of establishing trust. And once control plane realizes that a given transaction or access can be trusted, it takes care of establishing secure tunnels or rather encrypted channels between two entities in the data plane. So once we add this control plane, you kind of get a viable zero trust architecture. We'll go to the next slide. Big thing about zero trust architecture is one or two paradigm shifts that happen compared to the traditional architecture. Traditional security, you would look at something as outside, which is remote users, the internet. Then you have edge servers, and then you have the intranet where you have critical servers and mission critical servers. And for outside users to come into your network, you'd have some entities between you, whether it's a VPN or anything else you want to put there. And then once they're inside, you treat them as local users. And basically, you start with something untrusted, and as you move inside the network, you move from untrusted to trusted to more privileged. We totally reverse this in zero trust. What we do in zero trust is that, go to the next slide. What we do in zero trust is that whether you're outside the network or inside the network, basically you are not trusted. We treat everything as untrusted entity. And then you have a control plane. And then every transaction that happens or all the communication that happens inside the network, you make sure that they're encrypted. We're calling them tunnels now. And any entities that you're not supposed to see or segments that you're not supposed to see, we'll look at microsegments soon when Ajit shows us how they look. We call it cloaking, which means we're able to hide things from people who are not supposed to see them. And then every access is verified and authorized. So these are the things that you implement to realize a zero trust architecture. Next. So there are multiple technologies that make up zero trust. You know about encryption, you know about endpoint security to make sure that your endpoints are sane and safe. You have a large set of software that take care of user and network analysis on what's happening there. You have a lot of identity and access management solutions. There are multi-factor authentication systems that exist. Highlighted microsegmentation here because that's a good differentiator that you add to zero trust. We'll talk about why microsegmentation is important and why it's different. Of course, we can talk about all these hexagons, but most of them are something that you will be familiar with. So we'll focus on microsegmentation with respect to zero trust. Next slide. Now, if you visualize a vanilla network or a typical network, let's say you have multiple tiers of servers, each of them serving their own purpose. You can probably imagine an ability to group a set of servers and services and users together into groups which are self-contained, which means if you are allowed to do something in the blue band, then you should not be able to see anything in the red box or the green box. So that is what microsegmentation can help you do. It can restrict you, it can define a world for you and make sure you stay within that world and you don't see anything outside that world. Unless you are related to the red box, you'll not even know that the red box exists. That's what we call as cloaking, which means based on who you are, whether it's a user or a device, you can be put into groups or microsegments which will restrict you to that group and which will also protect you from anybody who's not part of your group. That is what we will demonstrate later. Compared to last week's articulation, deliberately talking about cloaking today because that is what the demo will show. So we slightly modified the articulation to enhance the understanding. So we'll go to the next slide. Almost conscious of the time that we're all curious to see how zero trust works in action. So pretty soon you'll see that. What does a journey towards zero trust looks like? You take your network, you identify your data, what is critical, what is not, and what needs more protection, and how does the data flow. And you look at the network and where you make up the network. You take care of what's critical, you take care of what is privileged. Once you gather all of these intelligence, then you want to architect and design your network based on zero trust principles. Whether you're looking at data, whether you're looking at transactions and flows, you want to define microperimeters, which you call as microsegments. And then you define zero trust policies in terms of who can access what. Really put these down in simple steps. Each of these is a monster in itself. Then you implement zero trust, whatever you defined and designed. And once you keep it running, you monitor so that you keep inspecting on what's happening, you keep logging, and you analyze so that you can recognize threats and quickly isolate. Now, that each of these steps is not straightforward. It's really complex if you're not using the right tools. I see a question from one of the audience. Says, is it possible to implement 100% absolutely zero trust in any sensitive area? Maybe I'll tie that question to this. Each of these are complex steps. And then the solutions are how do you implement, let's say, microsegmentation to simplify this? Whether you can discover, design, and deploy. If you want to do it at the network level, it can become mind boggling. How do you design a network? How do you reconfigure all your network elements? Kind of becomes mind-boggling unless you switch to identity-based microsegmentation, where you can look at your entire network as a flat network, irrespective of design, and do microsegmentation based on identities, identity of users and identity of devices. And then when you monitor how quickly you can respond in seconds, we could look at dynamic isolation as well. Today, we'll look at basically microsegmentation. We have demos about dynamic isolation also on the Unisys website. So with this, what I'll do is I'll hand over to Ajit, who will actually show how microsegmentation can be made easy, or rather how zero trust can be made easy with Unisys Stealth. Unisys Stealth is one of our flagship products that takes care of providing microsegmentation as well as a whole lot of other features. I'll probably ask Ajit to explain that. Ajit, over to you.
All right. Thank you, Sri, and I hope everyone is able to hear me. Right. So moving along. So we'll see in the next round, like I think around like 35 minutes to 40 minutes, we'll be seeing how this, like zero trust is made easy with Unisys Stealth. So just as what Sri mentioned, our Stealth is a microsegmentation product, which is primarily focusing on helping your network to be adhering to the zero trust principles, and it will also help you to improve your network security. So when you say network, it could be a small network, it could be a medium size, it could be large, it could be, it could be very, very complex as well. Now, the three steps that's involved that we saw earlier in the slides were to discover, design, and then deploy. So I will be taking you through all of this, and also towards the end, I have an end-to-end demo where I'll be showcasing a 3-tier application, how you can manually configure as well as also show how things are done automatically using using this like product. Now, discovering a network. Now, gone are the days when, things were done on papers and all, right? So when you have a large network, initially you would maybe probably have some sort of a design done on a whiteboard or things of those sort, and then you'll go and implement those. But over a period of time, that whiteboard discussion or the design that was laid out sort of becomes maybe changed a little bit. You know, as it evolves, it is not the same thing as what you designed probably 5 years back, or even probably for a month back. Things might have changed because, as you see, many people come in and go onto a network. So now, what we and how do we do this recommend, or how do we do the discovery of the network? So you could use the standard network capture tools such as Wireshark, or this like TCP dump that's available. Basically, that will capture out the packet information that is like traversing across your network, and using that we will be able to model your network. You could also alternatively use the like enhanced versions of these like capture tools, which is the discovery agents from Stealth. That's available both for the Windows operating system as well as the like Linux operating system. So the difference between the standard as well as our things is that we will be taking a little more information, which is that's available in the packet, to be able to design your network much more easily for you. So I will take you through now what a sample PCAP file looks like. I'll be taking through a small PCAP file as well as a large PCAP file. I'll be importing the data onto the application that we have, the Stealth application. We'll see how to visualize, and we'll see a little bit of concordance mapping and the node classification a little bit. All right. So what you see right now here is that I've used the Wireshark application to load up a very small network. So basically in this, you have 6 nodes, and you see the various like communication that's happening between the various nodes out here. And the information, all that we actually care about is the source, to which server it's trying to reach out to, which node it's trying to reach out, what is the port, and as well as the like protocol that the two systems are like talking to each other. So now, because it's a small one, we probably can sit and draw this information on a paper, or use any other tool to do that. So Unisys Stealth also gives you this ability to do this as well. So we'll see how that looks. What I'll do is I will import the same PCAP file onto onto the application. So I'll start off with an existing project, which is not yet loaded. I've just labeled the project like that. So I'll just import that traffic. And so what we are doing right now is that we're using our AI as well as ML like algorithms to draw a like concordance map onto the canvas, so that it's more clear for you. So based on our algorithms, what we have done is we have understood that there are 2 database servers based on the PCAP file that you've given. There are 2 application servers, and there are 2 systems which are most likely to be the end user systems, because this is considered as a typical, like 2-tier application. You would have end users, or it could be that, right? I'll show you this in the regular view, how we saw it in the in the like Wireshark format. So there is this concept that we call as affinity off, which means sort of like, okay, show me how the actual communications were happening behind the scenes, or what is the data that we have. So this is how it looked like. It had these many nodes, and these are the various communication that the nodes were having to each other. And it also sort of defines what are the services that has been that these nodes were like providing to each other. So in this case, you see the 0 or 1 node is like providing the TCP like 3306. So which likely it means that since it's a well-known port, it is meant for this is meant for like database server. So we are able to classify those kind of things. So all of this classification information, we are dependent on the like IANA standards that have been published, and we also give the user the ability to actually define their own set of like services as well on this a little bit. So now I'll take you through another PCAP file, which is a little more large, which is roughly around 400 nodes plus out here. And this is how the PCAP file looks like. So imagine that you have to go through all of this and try and make sense, or you have to trying to model this network on your own on a piece of paper or any other tool. It would be really difficult as well, right? So now this is where I'll show you the same thing, how it is done on the using the tool as well as. So in this case, I've imported the PCAP file, and we are in that affinity off mode, or where we're seeing the raw packet transformation. So I mean, when I first saw this data, right, I was a bit astonished as to saying, okay, is there so many intercommunication that's happening between the various nodes? And how am I going to actually define policies or implement zero trust on all of this? This is a lot of information out here. The more you go, and this is an information that's available for a 400 set of nodes. And imagine for any large organization, there could be thousands and 10,000s of users, servers coming in, right? People and all. So now this is where we make things easier for you out there. So now we'll see now how can we actually do the how can we make this much more easier and things of that sort. So this is where the designing part of it comes. Now that you have discovered your network, now how do we design the network? Now for someone to make let's say groupings of all those nodes, he could do it manually as well, but that will take a lot of time. So that's why we have the whole of the like affinitization process, what we call it as. It's basically grouping of nodes based on the services that they like provide. Now this is where one of our ML algorithms come into play. And most importantly, what we're trying to do with this process is that we're trying to reduce the complexity that is involved in trying to define your network. And then another part of the microsegmenting, as you've heard earlier in the previous slides, is to apply policies to it, right? So we have heard that if you have encrypted traffic, that's the best way to go about, and that's how you achieve, like cloaking. You could allow like clear text, which means you want traffic to be transferred unencrypted. That's also, based on the network needs, you would have that. Or you could go to a case where it says that I don't want any traffic to be allowed at all. And you could, protect your system in that way as well. So these are the different kinds of ways of you can apply the policy. And the most important thing is to authorize anyone, right? So we have integration with Active Directory. It could be any sort of, the reason why we have Active Directory or any sort of LDAP protocols is so that someone needs to be let's say the main authority to say that who the user is claiming to be out there. Okay. And we'll see this a little bit now as well on what happens. So from this raw format view, right, I will go back to the affinitization. So we have different ways of affinitizing the nodes. You want nodes to be grouped based on the services very closely, loosely, or or in between. So most of the time, in between sounds to be the right thing to start off. And again, we're just applying the process now here. And what you see as an outcome now is that you will see that there are 2 cluster database servers, and there are 2 different sets of application servers, 3 servers each in accessing database, and a lot more other services. So once this finished loading up, I'll be able to showcase that out. So I see a question like, how do we do networking? How do we model this like zero compliance if you don't have a PCAP file? So the tool does allow you to actually model things manually. In my demonstration later on, where I'll be doing an end-to-end demo, I'll be showcasing that how we could do that. So you see that those information we have analyzed and we have said, okay, now there are two set of database servers, which are like cluster database talking through application servers, and then it goes to the web proxy, and there are a lot of users and things of this sort, right? So now all of this, now you've sort of starting to microsegment. Now you've understood your network. Now you've classified your nodes and as well as other devices on your network. The next step would be to actually make them into logical groupings further. And also for that, also you could do this manually, or you could create it automatically as well. So we have that ability as well. So based on the root nodes, which is when most of the applications we'll have a database, right? And that would be the root. And considering from that, we'll be able to define how the various systems are able to talk to each other. And you see out here, we are able to define things. And then you can go ahead and define policies on like what you want. How do you want the systems in this grouping to be able to talk to this set of systems? Now, do you want it to be on stealth allow? Or do you want it to be as clear text, or how is that? And there's an option of actually how strong you want to make it as well. How do you want to enforce it? Do you just care? Do you care about who is coming into the network as to which IP addresses, or do we care, or do you just care about like if someone is authorized, we will just I don't care which IP address is coming in from. I will give them access to it. It's a choice for you as an administrator or the user of this tool. So there are this various other options as well as enforce IP addresses, as well as enforcer for both, which is the most strongest of all out there. And the last step that was there was to actually to deploy. Now, we all know that in a network, things keep changing. And so we have the ability to actually help you determine what the changes are, this are sort of that have come onto the network, and apply policies very like quickly on them, or to help you microsegment. So every time you have PCAP files being imported, right? We are actually segmenting the network for you. You can also tell us how it should be segmented. If you prefer to manually configure all of those, and when do you deploy all of this information? Now, when do you want to apply these changes? Now you have discovered, you have modeled, and then as to when you deploy the changes in email. So there are multiple options as well. Sometimes it could be immediately, sometimes it could be for a specific date and time, or manually. There are in cases where most of the organization, or even for any maintenance, there would be a maintenance window, right? And that's when you make changes to your network, all of that. So in my, what I'll do next is I will go ahead and play a video of where I'll be actually walking you through the whole thing. So here I have actually a 3-tier application. I have the database server out on the top left-hand side. Then I have the app server. You can look at the names of the systems to help you understand. And we have the web tier out here on the top right, and the client system, right? So in this demonstration, I would be actually doing things manually to showcase that aspect of that. We can do it manually as well. And without any further ado, I'll play the recording. Let me know if there's any issues when if the audio doesn't come through. All right, so I saw that there's a audio. Okay, let me try to share again. All right, so this time it should work out. In this demo, we will see how we can model a three-tier application, apply policies to it, and also deploy. I will start off by opening an existing project where the stealth management plane has been already deployed. So for our three-tier application modeling, let me start off by creating a solution onto the canvas. And I'm going to give a name to it as my three-tier app. And by default, I want the policy to be set as block clear text and stealth. And so I'll do this so that I can specify which services would be enabled when the endpoints are stealth enabled out here. Now that I've done the basic policy definition for all of my nodes, which I'm going to create. Now let's go ahead and manually hydrate the canvas a little more. So I'll start off by creating the DB lake profile so that I could host the DB node onto it. Let me rename this profile to be as DB tier. And I can also choose a classification to help me identify this more on the canvas. I will go ahead and now add a node. And the IP address where my DB server is hosted is 60.4. Click on add. And now what I'll do is I will create the app server clay profile so that it could host the application server. Again, I'll just set the classification very quickly out here, give a name to it as app tier, add the node. And now I will go ahead and create the next profile, which is to host the web tier. I'm going to call this as web tier. Assign a classification to it of web servers to it. And I will also add the web tier node IP address. Now, in my application, I only want the the communication to happen between the DB tier to the app tier, and then from the app tier to the web tier, right? So I will establish a like communication path between these two like systems out here, and I can specify what is a service that's going to be enabled. So since this is a database tier, I'm going to enable TCP, and I'm going to enable port 3306 for now. And in order for me to define a policy of, I can choose the policy further to be changed if required to what I like it to be. And what I will do is I will similarly go ahead and create the channel between the app tier to the web tier. And let me open up port 9443 out here. Right. So now we have defined the basics of like how the various nodes in the 3-tier application are like supposed to be talking. You see out here that all these like communication paths to the like authorization servers. Now this is to help these systems that are being stealth enabled to get updates, as in when you make more like changes onto the canvas and you deploy, those changes are pushed immediately out onto these servers. So there needs to be a communication path, sort of like with the like control plane out here. Now that I've configured this basic things, now I will also go ahead and create one more select solution, and that's where we will host the client systems. So I'll just call it as users in this case. Create a profile again, and since I know the IP address of the system from where I'll be accessing, I will go ahead and add the IP address there. And let me give a little more meaningful name to this and just call it as maybe the client. I can just give it a classification of user for it. And the next step would be for me to actually go ahead and deploy these changes because I am content with the way how I modeled. Oh, one thing I forgot um, is that once you stealth enable your endpoints, right? Only communications that you model on the canvas will be allowed. So I would like the endpoints to be able to talk to the Active Directory. So for that, I would need to create channels from the Active Directory system out to all of these nodes. So let me do that now. So again, for that, it's easy as you can drag and drop the channels. So what you're seeing actually right now is that, how I'm able to model this manually as well. So in the interest of time, I will skip a little bit a part of it because I'm just trying to draw all the channels between the various nodes out here. And I will go to the deploys part of it now. And here I am basically establishing the connection between the client systems as well as the web tier, because I only want the systems. I basically want the users to reach only out to the web tier and not to anyone else as well. And we have this deploy functionality. I'll just skip through this a little bit as well now, where you get a chance to sort of give a name for the package that you would like Then you can also sort of set here is where I said you could set when do you want to apply these changes. Do you want to apply changes now, later on, or at a specific, or you want to do it manually? You could do that. And then you could optionally integrate with an ITSM ticket number change and all of those things. I'll just skip out of this part, primarily because we'll get to the interesting part of stealth, how stealth gets into action out here. And so yeah, I'll continue playing for me because this will also tell you how we can integrate with the Active Directory. What happens is you will have the authorization servers that is out here will be able to reach out to the Active Directory and verify if that user is actually present or not. And so that's where how we are sort of achieving the user-based authentication and authorization part of it. So here there's I've clicked now on the Active Directory, and then you have an option to look at the settings, and here is some of the information that you specify so that the systems can reach out and verify that the person who's logged into this endpoint, whichever endpoint out here, is actually a valid user. And this is how we see the power of that, how we segmented, as well as we're trying to do user authentication as well, and not just because anyone who is in the network would not be able to just access any of these systems out here. I'll go back now to the deploy screen, and let's take a look at whether the deployment has finished or not. It's almost done, and the deployments have been finished. So I'll accept that this has been completed out. And now let's actually go ahead and deploy the stealth endpoint packages. So once you install the stealth endpoint package and configure as which user those systems should be running, they would be stealth enabled. So I have out here the database server, the app server. I also have the web server out here. Let me log in back to the web server. And I also have the client system out here. So now I'll be using a tool known as the Echo tool that's available in like GitHub for anyone to use. This tool basically like simulates how a real-time traffic would be there. Instead of me using the regular ping command, I'm just going to use this for now and showcase that. So what I'm doing right now is that I am enabling a port 3306 because that's where my database service is running on. And we'll first see that all of the systems are able to reach the database server. So I'll enter the database server IP address, and then I'll say /b. I'll enter the protocol 6, and I'll also give it a message saying that this is the app server. And press enter. You see that the app server is able to talk to the database server, and I'll do the similar thing as well from here, where I'm trying to reach out to the DB server. So you can see that the web server is able to talk to the DB server as well. And here we have the client machine. We'll also execute a similar command to see that the client can talk to the DB server as well. Out here. Right. So what you're seeing just right now is that all the 4 systems are able to reach to each other and all, And now when we install the stealth software onto those endpoints, we'll see how the microsegmentation is achieved and things of that sort. So that'll be in the next 10 minutes that's out there. So this is just to give you an idea that this is a VLAN based environment. It will work even for a flat network as well. It does not matter. And basically because stealth does not need to know how your network topology is as well. It works most on the authentication and the zero trust principles out there. So that's what. So we don't need to know where is the device or the system that's being accessed out. Right? You see that as well. Right? So this is on a VLAN based environment. How to install one package and configure the user. What I'll do is I will go to the packages and I will run this as an administrator. Wait for this to finish off. And one last step I need to do out here is to actually set as which user I want this server to be run as. So since this is the database server, I'm going to select the DB user which is present in the Active Directory, for which I'll just do that now. access to this. I'm going to give the username as DB user. Provide the password, and then just accept the default things, and I'll just restart the stealth service. You can see that I'm stealth enabled, and I have got the various communication paths that I need. I will skip the installation of the endpoint package on both app server as well as the web server. It is a similar play procedure out there. We can now see that the database server, the app server, as well as web server all have been stealth enabled, and they have their CUI materials which will enable them to talk to each other. So now let's see this in action. So based on this information that you see here on the stealth dashboard, it indicates that there is a communication between the DB tier and the app tier, which we have modeled on the canvas, and that's the same information that you see out here. And from the app server, the communication was allowed towards the DB server as well as to the web server, and that's why you see both the web tier as well as the app, as well as the DB tiers communication path enabled out here. And for the web server, we said that it will be mainly talking to the app server. It will not have access to the database server. And we also had the users reaching out to the web tier. All right. So let's see now this in action. So what I'll do is I will go back to the database server and I will enable the echo tool to be listening on port 3306. And first, let's check. Yeah, so let's first check if the app server is able to reach the database server. 60.4. App server. You see that it's able to receive the information out there. We'll also execute this command from you see that the communication is not going through. So now let's see if the client, which was earlier able to even reach the DB server, whether it can reach the database server. we see that even it's not able to reach out, right? So, but then we will see that the client is able to reach out to the web server because that is allowed. So for that, let me just give in the, so first of all, I need to make the web server to be listening on that service. So let me run the same command. I'm going to say /p/t s and 443. That was a port number that we had enabled. And I will give the web TS IP address. And let's run this command. You see that the web server is able to get the connection. So essentially, what we have achieved is we have segmented the network into these three like communication paths that you see out here, and you see how easy it was actually to do all of this. So now if I want to now further make any more changes, I can go ahead and let's say I want to block a particular service. I can go ahead and add that port and protocol out here. So I'm just going to pick a random number now, and then I can specify what is the policy that I want. Let's block. So let's say I'm going to take block. So what that means is that after I do a deploy, none of the systems would be able to reach the node which is running the app server on this particular port. So you can incrementally, small changes you can do a deployment, or alternatively, you could import a large pcap file and then let the stealth automation do its job for you, and you can make slice adjustments to the model and then make the deployment. I hope this presentation and right. So that was the demo actually. I hope that really made sense, and and how we saw sort of how easy it is to use stealth to achieve your the zero trust network architecture. See, now it might seem a bit, let's say, lengthy process. That's because for the video purposes, I had deliberately gone a bit slow. But otherwise, for anyone who's using the product, they would not find it to be this slow, especially just for the video I did this. With this, I will we'll go back to the slides and we'll continue on. I think we are running out of time as well on this. So this is what we just finished off the end-to-end demo, and on to the next slide. Sriyanas or Sheshadri?
Okay, thanks. Ajit, thank you. I think no, it is a complex product. I was just looking at the chat and Shri was responding. So this is definitely something that will take some time to get used to. It's an easy way of being able to form what we call communities of interest, and then communication between those communities of interest becomes what we call the microsegmentation. So in the interest of time, we do have a few closing slides, and I just want to kind of go through that, and then we can open it up. If there are any remaining questions, then we can open it up for this. So if you look at this chart, you will see that, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the NIST cybersecurity framework, which is really identify, detect, recover, and respond and recover. Right? So if you'll see, this is kind of an ecosystem that we have built, based on zero trust from a Unisys standpoint. and we have put our offerings segregated across these nest defined framework. So you will see, the left side as I move from left to right, we just looked at stealth. We saw the asset discovery module in stealth. There are also items about talking about cyber risk management in terms of how do we quantify risks so that it becomes easier for leadership in the organization, CISO, and others to be able to communicate the importance of where the risks are, how do you quantify it, and speak the business language. Because end of the day, in a lot of the companies, it boils down to what is the budget you have, and there's always a fight for budgets. And how do you spend that money well so that you're protecting at least most of your critical risks? You can't be protecting everything, but at least. So Trust Check as a product really helps you identify those risks and quantify them. On the right side, we talked about stealth again. We're also looking at behavior-based endpoint and security posture management. You move down, we have the SIM tool that's being able to, which is really the security information and event management, really being able to triage all the incidents used in the SOC typically, and then SOC analyst having different levels and so on. And on the left side, bottom left side, we talked about dynamic isolation if some of you attended in the last session, because the point is that bad things will happen, and as in more and more companies are now realizing that if you do not have the mechanisms to respond and then recover eventually, then you're really at a disadvantage. And this is really also bringing in the concept of resilience now. People are trying to understand what is their cyber resilience. Also, there are a couple of partnership products in terms of cyber recovery. So again, going back to a situation where you will have to recover, and then do you have the backup in an environment that is air gapped so that your recovery process and your replication process is full. Next slide, please. Yeah, it is a complete security suite. That's right. We talked about this again. So, we participate in the RSA quite often. And, if you look at the centerpiece of the slide, Forrester comes out with the annual report on the ecosystem providers for Zero Trust. Unisys has been featured as a strong performer there. We've also been featured there, saying that Unisys Stealth embodies the zero trust principles of trusting no user or device inside or outside the private network. You saw a demo of the microsegmentation product that Ajit just provided. We also do participate in the RSA conference, and last year or this year, we did have a CTF kind of an event where there was a $10,000 cash for somebody who could compromise the stealth system. We left it open for a few hours, or maybe it's 24 hours, and good for Unisys, good for us that nobody was able to hack the Unisys stealth solution during the contest that was held in RSA 2020. Next slide. So, conclusion, this is an area which is, this is a very interesting area for two reasons. One is the threat landscape is constantly changing. The threat actors are constantly changing. There are nation states and all of that. And the technology is constantly changing. So we are actually having a number of moving parts in the cybersecurity ecosystem. Added to that, volume of data users are increasing. So it is a very, very dynamic ecosystem. We do believe Zero Trust will be the preferred model going forward for corporations and public networks. Microsegmentation, we believe, will play a huge role. We saw a number of technologies that she talked about, but microsegmentation really sits in the middle. It's the core. We do believe it's not difficult. You need to have the right technology, right mindset, right skills, and then have some patience, because this is not a small 2-month project. It is a journey. It's a multi-year phased approach, and hopefully we were able to, as a team, bring to you over the last 2 webinars the concept part, which was there in the first session, and then you saw a demo that Ajit provided in this session. Definitely, 2 hours or 2.5 hours is not enough for this, but I'm hoping that you got some initial idea what this is all about. This will hopefully inspire you more, and be able to for you to go ahead and learn something, do some research, visit the Unisys website, and thank you so much for being such a good audience. Very, very engaging questions. Shri, do you want to have any closing comments?
No, Jayesh, you covered it. Hopefully, we made it easy and friendly. By the way, we also do invite challenges or challenging ideas in our Cloud 2020 contest, which we spoke about last week. I think one of the questions we faced was, how do I engage with Unisys as a student, or if I want to work further with Unisys? One of the best ways to engage with us is the currently open Cloud 2020 contest, which is an open technical paper contest or technical project contest for both students and working professionals. Feel free to Google for that, you will reach that easily. That's something I wanted to add, but otherwise, I hope we made the concept friendly and easy to remember, and we use the product to make it easy to understand, because we thought we showed it in action. Stealth as such is a large product, and there are a lot of features, a lot of use cases, but we had to pick parts of it to show you zero trust in action. Like Shesh said, it's a journey. So hopefully this was a good session, and we enjoyed interacting with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.